Hi guys, it's been a couple days, but here we go again. Unmasked, Dr. Schultz, IQ 127. Wonder who's going to get unmasked. Do you have an idea? I was in my car heading back to the office, but something didn't sit well with me. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Expressing my appreciation to Mrs. Patterson had been, had been the right thing to do. We all had dodged a bullet thanks to her. She had saved the district an enormous amount of aggravation, irate parents, frantic phone calls, summer plans changed, complaints to the school board, and maybe even the state. It would have been the biggest screw-up of the year. Well, second biggest. Perhaps it was the academy itself that had unnerved me. That place always made me uneasy. Now, don't get me wrong, gifted programs are an essential resource for a school district. The trouble with them is they attract so many know-it-alls. I stopped at a light, frowning. Something Kyle Osborne had said was still rattling around my head. And I couldn't recall the name. Dominic, Donnelly, followed by, not on another one of his extended bathroom breaks. Extended bathroom breaks. That was the answer. It was common enough for an unmotivated student to kill time in the bathroom, hoping to make the days speed by, but not at the academy. There were no mediocre students there, and if one of our best and brightest had decided to squander his placement, he should step aside in favor of someone who wouldn't waste the opportunity. As soon as I was back at my desk, I called Brian Del Rio. Maybe he could identify this missing kid. He was out of the office. "Page him, please," I said, and sat back to wait. As my eyes passed over the screensaver on my computer, it occurred to me that Brian might not be my only source of information about that class. There was also Noah's YouTube channel. I winced. Euchililicious. Not the easiest name to spell, but I found it soon enough and stared in amazement. 114 featured videos. Noah had the highest IQ in the history of the district, but from the looks of this, all the boy did was run around with a flip camera. My attention was instantly drawn to Tin Man Metallica SquarePants exposes teacher's underwear. Oh, God bless America. It had already been viewed more than 6,000 times. That wasn't good. What could be a bigger screw-up than a lawsuit over the misconduct of a robot? I clicked on the link and the clip began to play. It showed Maria Bevilacqua laying papers on a semicircle of desk. As she moved, Tin Man rolled into the picture, falling in behind her, matching her pace almost perfectly. The forklift mechanism began to rise, catching the hem of her full peasant skirt. Up it went until there was more of Mrs. Bevilacqua on the screen than I cared to see. Judging by the giggles in the room, or in the background of the video, the last person to notice this was Maria herself. And when she finally did, the screech prompted my computer to warn me that my speakers were in danger. And right before the clip ended, the camera swung around and focused on the student who was operating the robot's joystick controller. My blood turned to ice in my veins. It was I had a vision of an upturned face staring wide-eyed into the wreckage of the Hardcastle gym. That nameless face was the first thing I saw every morning and the last thing I saw at night. It had starred in my wildest nightmares, taunting me, driving me crazy for weeks. Donovan. It was him. Cheating investigation. Interview with Chloe Garfinkel. Ms. Bevilacqua. I've noticed that you and Donovan are pretty good friends. Chloe. I guess. Ms. Bevilacqua. Well, it would bother you if he had to leave the academy, wouldn't it? Chloe. Why would he have to leave? Ms. Bevilacqua. Oh, you have a brilliant mind, Chloe. You must have noticed that Donovan doesn't share your academic abilities. Chloe. But he's good at a lot of things that I'm not. Ms. Bevilacqua. You know as well as I do that operating a video game joystick doesn't compare to the kinds of strengths that we value here. Chloe. Well, maybe, but he passed the test. Miss Bevilacqua. Did he? Chloe. You'd know better than I would. The scores were reported to the school, not to me. Miss Bevilacqua. We're beginning to suspect that someone helped Donovan. Was it you, Chloe? Chloe. How could I possibly? You mean a hacker? That would be hard. You'd have to override the encryption of a secure internet connection from the state. Ms. Bevilacqua. Exactly. I see that you know how it's done. Chloe. Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean I'd do it. Not for my own mother. Ms. Bevilacqua. But for your boyfriend? Chloe. Donovan is not my boyfriend. I don't have a boyfriend. Ms. Bevilacqua. Calm down. No one is making any accusations yet. Chloe. Honestly, Ms. Bevilacqua, we knew Donovan was in trouble with the test. We offered to help him study, but he just couldn't. It didn't work out. Ms. Bevilacqua. Define we. You and who else? Chloe. Are you asking me to rat out my friends? Next chapter. Unwelcome. Donovan Curtis, IQ 112. I was pretty good at video games, but never had I felt more comfortable with a joystick in my hand than when I was driving Tin Man. The robot was like an extension of my will. The slightest twitch of my finger and he was instantly obedient to the controller. It was as if my every thought could make him dance. For once we weren't in the lab. With the state robotics meet barely a week away, it was time to simulate competition conditions. The team had spent all morning converting the gym into a perfect copy of the Duchess Auditorium where the tournament would take place. Tin Man moved back and forth, accepting inflated rings from Abigail and placing them on the pegs we had attached to the gym's climbing apparatus. We'd even set up the pit, which would serve as our headquarters. At the meet, it supplied everything from tools and spare parts for Tin Man to a cooler of Ungifted, a high-energy drink that, according to Noah, hydrated faster than Gatorade. Most of the team was gathered around Oz, their eyes panning back and forth from the robot to the teacher's stopwatch. They let out an audible groan when I raised one of the rings too high and had to stop the robot to lower the mechanism down to the peg. That cost us time for sure. Easy, Donovan, the teacher cautioned. Remember, you've got a stronger motor in the forklift. At last, Tin Man placed the final ring, swung around and headed for the starting position. The stopwatch beeped, and Oz called out our time. Best we've ever done, people, even with a few hiccups. This is going to be our year, Luttrell crowed. We broke out the ukulele and toasted Tin Man and one another. Chloe had brought brownies, so it was kind of a party. It actually reached the point of some good-natured trash talk directed toward Cold Spring Harbor and how Tin Man was going to leave their robot lying in the dust. Of course, our team members were too polite for real trash talk, so I had to show them how it was done. Their hunk of junk doesn't stand a chance against Tin Man. Their hunk of junk wouldn't stand a chance against Tin Man's grandmother. Tin Man can't have a grandmother, Noah interjected. A machine is not a living entity and has no familial line. Probably why I never ran into any robots on Ancestry.com. We get the point, Oz put in, grinning. Let's just keep it to ourselves. It's a little premature for a victory celebration. Ha! There's no way Cold Spring Harbor can match the kind of times we're putting up, Kevin enthused. Not unless they're running their robot on rocket fuel. I'd never been much of a joiner, so this was my first taste of how it felt to be a part of a team that was a real contender, and not just a part. With the robot completed, I was more important than any of them. All those geniuses and the one person who could make Tin Man perform at championship level was the dummy who got stranded in the Gifted program by mistake. I didn't have a clue how to design, build, or program a robot, but it was up to me to bring home the gold. And for the first time since I'd landed at the academy, I truly belonged. The heavy metal gym door was thrown open with such violence that it pounded against the cinder block wall. And there, framed in the light from outside, was nothing less than an avenging angel. Dr. Schultz. I swear he crossed the gym in 3 gigantic strides, shooting sparks from his eyes. I considered running, but what for? Even if I could manage to escape, where did I think I could go? I was completely and totally busted. Dr. Schultz, what a surprise, said Oz. You're just in time to see us put Tin Man through his paces. Well, that will have to happen some other time. The superintendent's voice was colder than his expression, if possible. The eyes fell on me. Donovan Curtis, your parents are on their way. Chloe was the first to clue in to the gravity of what was going on. Donovan might not be gifted in the same way as the rest of us, but he's the heart and soul of our team. He's the heart and soul of our class. Dr. Schultz regarded her sternly. Donovan's problems go far beyond trying to be what he's not. I followed him out of the gym while the squawking and protesting of my teammates rang off the rafters. He drives the robot! We're dead without him. He is so gifted. He brought us Katie. He showed me YouTube. He's one of us. Their support would have made me feel good if I hadn't been on my way to the end of the world. I scrubbed hard with a polishing cloth, and Madagascar got a little shinier. Maybe it was so dark in the sub-basement of the administration building that it was hard to tell Africa from South America. I was in the dungeon, or at least the closest thing they had to a dungeon in the Hardcastle School District. And my sentence was to polish up the bronze world that I had knocked off Atlas's shoulders all those weeks ago. And the worst part wasn't the polishing. It was chipping off years of bird droppings that had ossified by a chemical process I'll bet even Noah Euclidus couldn't explain. It was all useless, of course. There was no way Schultz was going to put this thing up again. Not after what had happened. But he wanted it perfect and gleaming in its hiding place. Actually, what he really wanted was for me to suffer. Believe it or not, cleaning the celestial sphere as part of 20 hours of community service was my only punishment for everything that had happened. My family was not going to have to pay for repairs to the Hardcastle gym. I was off the hook. A survivor, just like my ancestor, James Donovan, when he climbed out of the icy North Atlantic and into the lifeboat. Whacking the statue with a branch had been a dumb thing to do, but in the end, it fell within the range of normal wear and tear. The rusted bolt was at fault, not me. And now the only question was, would the insurance company pay for a design flaw from a foundry that no longer existed? "You got off easy, Donovan Curtis," the superintendent had told me sternly at the meeting with my parents. "I hope you realize that this could have gone a lot harder on you." He called me by my full name, almost as if he was afraid he might forget it again. I guess I couldn't blame him. These past weeks must have been like chasing a ghost. That's probably why he was so animated when he added, "I suppose I don't have to tell you that you're no longer a student at the Academy for Scholastic Distinction." Seated between Mom and Dad, I'd recoiled, as if he had slapped me. I didn't much care about the Academy. I'd never belonged there in the first place, but it hurt to be off the robotics team. My mother cried, but that wasn't exactly breaking news. She cried whenever anyone got voted off the island on reality TV. I understood her disappointment. As of today, I wasn't gifted anymore. Not only that, but I was responsible for the biggest town disaster since the famous gas line explosion of 1986, which ruptured a drainage pipe and filled the Hardcastle Public Library with raw sewage up to the second floor. Worse still was how Dad took it in stride. Now, some of that might have been his good mood at finding out he wasn't going to have to foot the bill for a new gym. Mostly, though, it said he had never truly believed I was gifted in the first place. His only comment was, "Do you think turpentine will take that bumper sticker off my car?" I never gave much thought to the fact that me being at the Academy had been such a big deal to him, but for some reason it bugged me that he wasn't more upset to learn that the whole thing was a sham. "You always suspected, huh, Dad?" He was quiet for a moment and then, "You know that website you like, the one about the ancestors and the great-granduncles and the old-time relatives? Well, I did my share of that kind of poking around when I was your age." That didn't make sense. They had Ancestry.com when you were a kid? Well, back then they called it the library. But if you go through enough microfiches, you can learn the same things. The names you dig up, I've heard most of them before. Irish forebears who moved to America, Canada, England, Australia, places like that. Amazing. I still couldn't explain why I did the things I did, but at least now I understood why I turned to Ancestry.com to look for answers. All those people went to different jobs, he continued. Teacher, construction worker, lawyer, gravedigger, even a mayor and a couple of city councilmen. As far as I can tell, they all lived satisfying, happy, productive lives. But you know what? Not one of them was especially gifted. Now think about that, and maybe you'll see why I'm not so crushed about this. What matters, the only part I really care about, is that you're happy. It was an impressive speech for a normally quiet guy like my dad. There was only one problem. I wasn't happy. In fact, I was pretty far from it. It was completely outside my control, but I felt like I was letting the robotics team down. For sure, Tin Man wasn't going to win anything with Abigail at the joystick. Worse, Katie was quitting human growth and development. "If they boot my brother, they boot me too," she said stoutly. "Who says you're not gifted?" "You do," I replied honestly, "and it's the truth." "Come on, Katie, it wasn't the kids who kicked me out. They're still 14 hours short for their credit. They'll have to go to summer school." "Well, that's tough," she snapped. "Summer school will be good for them. Let them see how the other half lives." What could I say? She was supporting me. Strange she should choose to start now. I felt bad, but I had to let it go. Dr. Schultz had spelled it out. That place wasn't my life anymore. In the real world, it never had been. My locker was gone. It was still there, but while I was at the academy, the administration had hacksawed my lock off and all my stuff had vanished. At the office, they told me to make a list of the missing items. I tried, but the only thing worth more than 3 cents was one combination lock, so I gave up. I kept seeing my locker at the academy, spacious, freshly painted, its built-in power strip waiting to help me by keeping my devices charged. Not that I had any devices. By comparison, my Hardcastle locker was about the size of a tiny apartment mailbox, and it smelled like feet. The whole building was an extension of my locker, shabby, crumbling, depressing. The academy was a palace by comparison. I don't know if I appreciated it when I was there, but I definitely appreciated it now, surrounded by broken drinking fountains and crumbling plaster. Week-old lunches overflowed out of every garbage can, and the halls rang with the voice of an assistant principal chewing out some poor kid over a random offense. Nobody took you for a cooling-off walk and a philosophical discussion at Hardcastle. Here, a paper airplane was not an experiment in aerodynamics. It was an act of war. I tried to work up more gratitude for being off the hook for the Atlas incident. This place just crushed it out of me. I doubt that James Donovan ever stood on the deck of the Carpathia and yearned to return to the icy water. But I couldn't stop itching for a rewind button to whoosh me back to the academy. It was stupid, I know. I never said I was gifted. I just wish I'd been. And I wish I'd been better at faking it. The Daniels arranged a homecoming for me that I'm not soon going to forget. In front of the entire lunch crowd in the cafeteria, they presented me with the 2012 Moron of the Year award, which looked suspiciously like the missing toilet from the upstairs boys' room. On the bowl, in dribbling red paint, was written, "Welcome home, stupid." It weighed 1.5 tons. Here he is, back from a very limited engagement at the Academy for Scholastic Dorkstinction. The man who turned out to be just as lame-brained as the rest of us. Give it up for Donovan, the dummy Curtis. I didn't die of humiliation. I only wanted to. There were a few lukewarm cheers, but most of the kids just didn't know quite what to make of it. I'd only been gone a few weeks, and half of them might have figured I took a long trip, or I had mono, or got suspended or something. Probably a lot of them thought, "Who's Donovan Curtis?" "Come on, you guys," Sanderson goaded the crowd. "If it isn't loud, he won't understand it." I hefted my award, which must have tipped the scale at 35 pounds, and swung it at the Daniels. The seat came off, whacking Nussbaum in the back of the head before cracking on the floor. That got a bigger response than the announcement of my award. My one consolation was that Chloe wasn't here to witness this. I don't know for sure, but she struck me as a pacifist. At any rate, toilet fighting was probably a no-no. This might have cured her of her longing to be normal. If it didn't, she was nuts. "Come on, man," Nussbaum offered. "We'll buy you lunch." "I brought my lunch," I said stubbornly. "Well, then grab a table," Sanderson instructed, rubbing the back of his head. "And don't forget your award, or what's left of it." I was wary. I'm not going to get blamed for stealing this, am I? I'm running low on schools I haven't been kicked out of yet. "See, that's what's been missing around here," Nussbaum noted. "That Donovan sense of humor. Welcome home, bro. The place wasn't the same without you." We had lunch with Heather and Deidre. Apparently, those four had been eating together for weeks. That made me the party crasher. I thought the one good thing about coming back to Hardcastle was at least I'd fit in. And guess again. As it turned out, I had to throw my sandwich away. It had spent the morning in my locker, and now the mayonnaise tasted like feet. I took handouts from my four companions. Girls put avocado in everything. Ugh. I was back with friends, or what passed for that. Funny, I'd been convinced I was friendless at the academy, but I'd felt more a part of things in Oz's robotics lab than anywhere here at Hardcastle. How could I compare the Daniels and their jokey, in-your-face version of friendship to the guardian angel hacker who had risked everything to pass that test for me? And now, with the academy permanently in my rearview mirror, I still had no idea who I was. I would have liked to say thank you. In a weird way, though, that person was even more ungifted than me. It made no sense to believe that a test score could make me something I wasn't. Classes at my new old school weren't better exactly, but at least I understood what was going on. I'd been faking it for so long at the academy that it was startling to suddenly know actual answers. I even raised my hand a few times in math until Sanderson bounced a spitball off my skull and hissed, "Dude, this isn't the academy." And I couldn't help thinking, no, it sure isn't. You can see it in the paint job and taste it in the bad cafeteria food. You can hear it in the dead air that hangs in the classroom when the teacher asks a question. You can smell it in the sweaty gym socks, so different from the synthetic oil aroma of a set of mechanium wheels. While I was in the bathroom, someone stole my toilet. The award one, not the one I was using. I made a mental note to buy Febreze for my locker. On the way home, the Daniels and I passed by the statue of Atlas. I hadn't been there for a while, not wanting to revisit the scene of the crime. The Titan was still oddly bent, with no celestial sphere to weigh him down, and at the bottom of the hill, the entrance to the high school gym remained boarded shut. I'd been so wrapped up in my own weird predicament that I really hadn't given much thought to the mess I'd made over here. The wave of remorse was stronger than I'd anticipated. Suddenly, 20 hours of scraping pigeon poop off a bronze sphere seemed like no more than I deserved. "You've done a lot of crazy stuff," Nussbaum sighed, "but this was your finest hour." "Well, it wasn't so fine for the gym," I said bitterly. "Or for me." Sanderson nodded thoughtfully. "You're right, it would have been better if the globe had gone crashing into the parking lot. It could have smashed like 10, 15 cars. I glared at him. "You guys deserve the toilet award more than me." Nussbaum grinned appreciatively. "Good to have you back where you belong." Where I belong. I looked at the gray, dreary hulk of Hardcastle Middle School and felt deeply bummed that he was probably right. We'll continue with cheating investigation interview with Abigail Lee tomorrow.